Hi everyone, I'm Natasha. In this clip, I will tell you about response registration. In this clip, I'm going to answer some questions. First, what is response registration? Second, what kind of information do you want to register? Third, what kind of registration suits your research project? And finally, what can you do with this information from response registration? What is response registration? Well, it is the registration of the process of recruitment and inclusion of potential participants. You register each step of the recruitment strategy. So response registration is the system in which you register the response of potential participants. This is different from participant registration, which is necessary after inclusion, when a potential participant becomes a participant. More information about the registration of participants is featured in the clip Participant Management Systems. What information you register depends on your recruitment strategy. How many steps do you have in your recruitment strategy, and what are those steps? You can only register information about the response when you know which organizations and potential participants have been approached. For instance, if you work with personnel of youth care organizations, like I did, and they talk to potential participants, it is important to register how many potential participants they approached, and how many of them wanted more information or not. Response registration therefore only works if you have information about the number of individuals who have been approached, and is therefore not suitable for online research since you don't know how many people have been targeted. It is important to understand that in this phase, you cannot store any personal data because these individuals did not give you permission to participate yet and therefore to have their data. However, you can register the number of approached organizations or persons. In that way, you have information about how many people you reached. So like I mentioned previously, the type of information that you register depends on the recruitment steps. To give you an example, we will look at the recruitment steps of the GRIP study, which is my PhD study. Recruitment started with contacting organizations through which I approached the target group. In this example, I collaborated with youth care organizations. Then, individuals from the target group were approached by youth care organizations. I had to collaborate with professionals from these organizations to get information for this step. They kept track of how many families started treatment in their teams and how many of them were approached for this study. The next step in the GRIP study was to get permission to receive contact information from these individuals in the target group, as I wanted to give them more information about my study. In this step, professionals registered how many people did not object to share their contact information with the research team. Therefore, this step tells me how many people I can send more information to about my study. Next, I contacted the potential participants to make an appointment in which I could inform them further of the study and ask them to sign the consent form. In this step, I registered how many people have been contacted and what their response was. Finally, if these individuals agreed to making an appointment, I informed them and asked them to sign the informed consent form. In this step, I basically kept track of how many people signed the form, and therefore it tells me the number of participants I have in my study. In every step of the recruitment strategy, potential participants have the option to decline participation. You generally do not have a lot of information from these individuals because they aren't participants yet. It is therefore extra important to try to find out if certain individuals are at greater risk for declining participation and whether you can do something about it. You can ask your partners for help with this. If potential participants do not match the inclusion criteria, they have to be excluded from the study, and this decision is made by the researcher, so by you, and not by the participants, like declining participation is. Make sure you also keep track of why and how often exclusion happens. Now I'll quickly show you 3 other examples of recruitment strategies just to give you an idea. I will not present them each step, so if you wish to have a look at them, just pause the video and read the steps on the slides. This is the example from the In Transition project, which works with schools. This recruitment strategy is from the project called Where Do I Belong? And this final example is the recruitment strategy from the NEPA or Becoming Need project. Like I mentioned previously, response registration works best if you know how many people have been targeted. Lisanne has a tip for when you do not know how many people have been targeted, like is the case in her project, which is the NEPA Becoming Me project. She says, you do not always know exactly how many people you have approached. For example, if you leave flyers in a waiting room, like I did in the NEPA Becoming Me study. In that case, keep track of how many people have signed up for your research, and from that step onwards, you can register each recruitment step per person. So response registration differs per project as it depends on the recruitment strategy. To decide what you need to register, start with writing down the recruitment steps of your own study. Try to keep the recruitment as simple as possible and as complex as necessary. Because of rules and regulations such as privacy laws or guidelines from an ethical review board, the recruitment strategy may become more complex than you may think. Make sure to check what regulations apply to your study. If your recruitment strategy is very simple, you can create one system for both response registration and participant management. But if it is complex, you may want to split these into different documents or systems. An example of response registration is provided in another clip on which is called clip 4.1a, and it is an example from the GRIP study. You may wonder why you would do all this work to create a response registration system and keep track of all this information. You're right that it can be very time consuming, but I will tell you that it is worth it. It provides you with very valuable information on which steps of your recruitment are successful and which are not, allowing you to improve your recruitment strategy. You can also share the information with partners and collaborators to keep them informed of the progress that you're making. This type of information is very suitable for interim communication, such as newsletters. And finally, you can use the response registration for your manuscript, for example, by making flowcharts.